When you really look at the standard blueprint for a successful life, there's this deeply ingrained expectation of sacrifice.
Oh, absolutely. It's like everywhere.
Right. It's presented to us like a very simple, almost unquestionable math equation. You put in your 60 or 80 hours a week, you climb the corporate ladder, you eventually get the corner office, and society looks at you, points, and says, well, there it is. That's success.
It's a highly linear model. The idea is the more hours you log, the more valuable you supposedly become to the world.
Exactly. The blood, sweat, and tears aren't just expected, they are actively celebrated.
Yeah, they are.
But then you look at the extreme logical conclusion of that spectrum. You look at Japanese corporate culture, for instance, and suddenly that simple math equation turns deadly. We're looking at a phenomenon that is honestly terrifying.
You're referring to karushi.
Yes, karushi.
It is the absolute definition of a systemic crisis. Literally translated, the term means working oneself to death.
Working to death. I mean, we are talking about healthy individuals in their 30s and 40s having sudden heart attacks or strokes right at their desks.
Yeah, the sheer volume of stress and the relentless hours simply cause the human body to shut down.
It's completely unsustainable.
Yeah.
And that incredibly dark reality brings us to the mission of our deep dive today.
Yeah.
Because we are looking at a framework that proposes the exact polar opposite of karushi.
We are deconstructing what is arguably one of the most polarizing, influential, and frankly, hotly debated lifestyle frameworks of the 21st century.
And that is Tim Ferriss's The 4-Hour Workweek.
Right. And we've brought a massive stack of material to the table for this. We're pulling directly from the expanded and updated edition of the book.
But we're not just taking the author's word for it.
No, definitely not. We've got real-world case studies like an entrepreneur who built a 7-figure Shopify business using these exact rules.
We also have highly detailed, decade-long retrospective summaries from Reddit users who applied this in the trenches.
And crucially, we're bringing in a very critical review by the financial expert Ramit Sethi to keep us grounded in reality.
Our objective here is synthesis. We want to extract the actual actionable systems you can use to escape the traditional 9-to-5 grind.
But we also need to separate the brilliant marketing hype from the hard reality of what it actually takes to pull this off.
Think about the core promise of this book. It's audacious. What if you could work just 4 hours a week, travel the world, live like royalty in Argentina or Berlin, and actually make more money than that 80-hour-a-week investment banker?
It sounds like a scam when you say it out loud.
It really does.
No.
But look, whether you are a trapped employee staring at a cubicle wall right now, wondering how you're going to do this for another 30 years, or you're an overwhelmed entrepreneur who built a business that has effectively become your prison.
Which happens a lot.
Yeah, happens all the time. We are going to unpack the architecture of escaping that cycle.
To do that, the material requires a complete paradigm shift regarding how we view retirement. It challenges the fundamental timeline of the modern worker.
Yes, let's get right into that. Because the traditional retirement plan, what the book calls the deferred life plan, reminds me of someone buying an incredibly expensive, beautiful bottle of vintage wine.
Okay, I like this analogy.
You buy it in your 20s, you put it down in the cellar, and you tell yourself, I'm saving this for the absolute perfect special occasion.
Right.
And you wait 30, 40 years, and when you finally pop the cork when you're 65, you discover it's turned to vinegar.
Oh, man. That's bleak.
But it's true. You missed the window. You sacrificed your healthiest, most energetic, most capable years for a payoff that might not even be there.
Yeah.
So my ultimate question going into this material is this. Is this 4-hour concept just a fantasy for lazy people who don't want to work? Or is there actual rigorous math behind this?
The math is incredibly sound, actually. But you have to understand that the variables being calculated are completely different than what we're taught in a traditional economics class.
Okay, how so?
Well, it has absolutely nothing to do with laziness. It's about fundamentally redefining the currency of wealth. For the traditional worker, the currency is purely financial. It's just money.
Right.
But for the demographic the text calls the new rich, the currency is time and mobility.
Time and mobility, not the number in the bank account, but the freedom to use the time you are alive.
Exactly. And to understand how people actually achieve this, we are going to follow a very specific 4-step framework laid out in the text. It's an acronym, DEAL.
And that stands for definition, elimination, automation, and liberation.
Before we even touch how we work, we have to rebuild how we define success in the first place. So let's start with the D in deal, definition.
The definition phase requires a psychological break from what the book terms the deferrers. We mentioned the deferrers. Those are the people operating on that deferred life plan.
Right. They are enduring a present they dislike for a future they hope will make up for it.
Enduring the present. That's a heavy way to look at a career, but it's incredibly accurate for a lot of people.
It is. The new rich, conversely, prioritize cash flow, time, and location independence right now.
And there's a vital distinction made here. They don't necessarily want to be the boss. They want to be the owner.
Yeah, they don't want to just accumulate objects, They want to accumulate experiences, but you can't hit a target you haven't defined. So to get there, they use a process called dreamlining.
Dreamlining, not traditional goal setting, where you write down, I want to be promoted in 5 years.
No, dreamlining is about shifting from ambiguous societal wants, like I want to be a millionaire or I want to travel more, to highly defined timeline-based steps.
You break your dreams down into 3 distinct categories, right?
Yes. Having, being, and doing. What physical things do you want to have? What kind of person do you want to be? What experiences do you want to do? And you attach a rigid 6-month and a 12-month timeline to them.
I was looking at the methodology for this, and it is ruthlessly specific. It's not, I want to learn a language. It's, I want to be conversationally fluent in Greek in 6 months.
Exactly.
It's not, I want a nice car. It's, I want an Aston Martin DB9. But the part that really caught me off guard is the philosophy behind why you pick these goals.
Yeah, the book explicitly argues against setting goals to make you quote-unquote happy.
Right. It argues that happiness is too vague. The goal of dreamlining is excitement. Excitement is the more practical synonym for happiness.
Because excitement drives action. If a goal doesn't excite you, you won't do the uncomfortable work required to achieve it.
It makes total sense.
Once you have those highly specific having, being, and doing goals, you calculate the exact monthly cost of funding them. You amortize the cost of the Aston Martin, the Greek tutor, the trip to Athens.
You add that to your basic living expenses. And that final number becomes your target monthly income, or TMI.
Which completely demystifies the dream.
Yeah.
You realize you don't need $5 million sitting in a mutual fund to live like a millionaire today.
You might just need like $8,000 a month in steady cash flow. It brings the dream out of the clouds and turns it into a solvable math problem.
And that leads us to the most critical math problem in the definition phase. To achieve that target monthly income, you have to understand the difference between relative income and absolute income.
This concept completely shattered how I view a salary. Walk us through the mechanics of that.
Okay, let's look at 2 hypothetical individuals. We'll call them Chap A and Chap B. Chap A is a high-powered corporate lawyer. He makes $100,000 a year.
Okay.
But to earn that, he works 80 hours a week, 50 weeks a year. Chap B is an online entrepreneur. He makes $50,000 a year, but he has optimized his life, so he only works 10 hours a week.
So in absolute terms, the raw gross dollar amount on a tax return Chap A is twice as rich.
Right. Society looks at Chap A, sees the suit, sees the 6-figure salary, and says, that guy is crushing it. And society looks at Chap B and thinks he's underachieving.
But when you calculate relative income, which measures income per hour of your life traded for it, the dynamic flips entirely.
Chap A is working 4,000 hours a year. That means he is making $25 an hour.
Wow.
Chap B is working 500 hours a year. Chap B is making $100 an hour. In relative terms, Chap B is 4 times wealthier.
But the text argues it goes even deeper than just the hourly rate, right? It's not just about the math on the clock. It's about control.
Precisely. It's about control over what are called the W's. What you do, when you do it, where you do it, and with whom you do it.
Chap A has high absolute income, but zero control over his W's. He has to be in a specific office in Manhattan at 8:00 a.m. dealing with clients he might despise.
Right. Chap B has total control over his W's. That control is a massive freedom multiplier.
Because that location independence allows for geo-arbitrage. If Chap B decides to take his $50,000 and move to a country with a highly favorable exchange rate and a lower cost of living.
Like parts of Southeast Asia, Eastern Europe, or South America.
Exactly. The practical purchasing power of his money explodes. He is earning in strong dollars and living in a local currency where everything from rent to food costs a fraction of what it does in the U.S.
Yeah, he is living a lifestyle that would cost $200,000 in San Francisco but he's funding it with $50,000, all while working 10 hours a week.
This circles right back to the vintage wine metaphor. The text makes a very bold claim. Retirement should be viewed essentially as worst-case scenario life insurance.
Yes, it's a financial safety net you plan for in case you physically cannot work anymore. It should not be the ultimate shining goal of your existence.
Designing your entire youth around a distant retirement makes a massive assumption. It assumes you actively dislike what you were doing during the most physically capable, vibrant years of your life.
And that you just need to survive until the pain stops. That is a fundamental misallocation of human energy.
The human body and mind are designed for alternating periods of intense activity and profound rest.
I want to clarify something here, though, because a casual listener might think the goal of the 4-hour work week is to completely eliminate all stress, sit in a hammock, and effectively become a vegetable.
Yeah, just doing absolutely nothing forever.
Right. But the sources are very careful to distinguish between different types of stress. It's the difference between distress and eustress.
Distress is harmful stimuli, right?
Exactly. It makes you weaker, more resentful, and physically ill. An abusive boss, destructive criticism, or grinding through an 80-hour week on a spreadsheet that no one is ever going to read.
The Karushi path.
That is distress. Eustress, however, from the Greek prefix eu, meaning good, is healthy stress. It's the stress of stepping outside your comfort zone.
Like the physical stress of lifting weights to build muscle.
Yes, or the mental stress of learning a complex new skill, or being challenged by a mentor. A life without eustress leads to rapid cognitive and physical decline.
So the new rich violently eliminate distress, but they actively engineer eustress into their lives to keep growing. So let's ground this. If I'm listening to this on my commute, and I'm currently Chap A, I'm working the 60, 70 hours. I have the high absolute income but terrible relative income, and my life is entirely composed of distress. Do I just walk into my manager's office at 9:00 a.m. and quit?
Absolutely not. Quitting without a system is catastrophic.
Right.
If you just pull the ripcord, you aren't liberating yourself. You are just trading the anxiety of being overworked for the anxiety of impending bankruptcy.
You cannot achieve a 4-hour work week if you are still functionally tied to meaningless busy work, or if you haven't learned to separate the crucial from the trivial.
You have to learn to deconstruct your workload first.
Okay, so I understand my target income. I understand the value of my time. But I'm staring down a barrel of 500 unread emails and back-to-back meetings. How do I actually start reclaiming those hours?
To gain time, you must first master the art of doing less. And that brings us to the E in the DEAL framework, elimination.
Elimination. This entire section essentially takes a sledgehammer to everything we've been taught about traditional time management.
Because traditional time management is fundamentally flawed. It teaches you how to do more things in fewer hours. It is entirely focused on efficiency.
But efficiency is irrelevant if you are doing the wrong things.
Exactly. The elimination phase is strictly about effectiveness. It's not about doing things faster. It's about doing only what matters.
Doing an unimportant task very well does not suddenly make it important.
That is such a critical distinction. We confuse motion with progress. Just because a task takes me 5 hours to complete doesn't mean it added any real value to my company or my life.
And the material introduces two massive pillars of elimination to combat this. The first is the Pareto principle, commonly known as the 80-20 rule.
Right. Vilfredo Pareto was an Italian economist who observed a law of uneven distribution. He originally noticed that 80% of the land in Italy was owned by 20% of the population.
But this principle applies universally. Roughly 80% of your outputs or results come from just 20% of your inputs.
Think about looking at an investment portfolio. It's like having a mutual fund with 10 stocks. 2 of those stocks are skyrocketing and generating 80% of your entire dividend yield.
And the other 8 are either stagnant or actively losing money. Yet you are spending all your management fees and emotional energy stressing over the 8 losers.
You have to liquidate the losers. It applies to every metric of a business. 80% of a company's profits usually come from 20% of its core customers.
Conversely, 80% of your customer service headaches come from a different 20% of hyper-demanding, low-profit customers.
It even applies to your personal life. 80% of your stress and frustration often comes from 20% of your relationships.
So the mandate of elimination is to ruthlessly audit your life. Identify the highly productive 20% and double down on it.
And identify the toxic or time-wasting 80%, and fire those clients, drop those tasks, and distance yourself from those energy vampires.
But auditing is only half the battle, right? Because even if I cut my task list down, I will naturally find a way to drag those remaining tasks out to fill my 8-hour workday.
Which is exactly why the Pareto principle must be paired with the second pillar, Parkinson's law.
Parkinson's law. This one feels like a personal attack on human nature.
It really does. Parkinson's law dictates that work expands to fill the time allotted for its completion.
If you were given an assignment on Monday and told you have a week to write a report, that report will take a week.
The task will mysteriously swell in perceived complexity. You'll spend 3 days researching irrelevant data, 2 days formatting the font, and write it in a panic on Friday.
But if your boss says, I need this report in 2 hours, you don't panic. You ruthlessly prioritize. You ignore the formatting, you grab the core data, and you get it done in 2 hours.
The time constraint forces effectiveness. We see a perfect illustration of these two laws working together in the case study of a worker named Charney.
Oh, the Charney story.
Yeah. Charney was trapped in a standard 40-hour week, feeling constantly overwhelmed. He decided to apply Pareto and Parkinson by setting a rigid time limit for his workday.
And he started asking himself one profoundly uncomfortable question repeatedly. Am I inventing things to do to avoid the important?
Exactly. It forces you to confront the reality that we often use busy work as a psychological crutch.
We check our email, reorganize our desk, or attend pointless meetings specifically to avoid tackling the 1 or 2 difficult, high-impact tasks that actually drive results.
It's the hamster wheel. We're sweating, so we think we're winning the race. But by catching himself in the act of doing fake work, Charney started physically leaving the office the moment the real work was done.
He reduced his work week from 40 hours to just 18 hours. And the incredible part, he quadrupled his actual output.
He achieved 400% more tangible results in less than half the time simply by cutting the fat.
And if you analyze where the modern knowledge worker's time goes, a massive portion of that fat isn't physical tasks, it's information consumption.
Right. To counter this, the text advocates for a low-information diet, which is essentially the practice of cultivating selective ignorance.
Cultivating selective ignorance. I have to admit, when I first read that, it sounded incredibly irresponsible.
It does sound bad at first.
We're told that being an informed citizen and a dedicated employee means being plugged into the news cycle and your inbox 24/7. But then I saw the data. There's a study cited from King's College in London that completely validated this approach.
The King's College study is a devastating indictment of our digital habits. They administered clinical IQ tests to 3 different groups of workers.
Group 1 was the control group. They just took the test in a quiet environment.
Group 2 tried to take the test while being constantly bombarded by incoming emails, instant messages, and ringing phones.
And Group 3 took the test without digital distractions. But they were literally under the influence of marijuana.
Wait, they functionally compared checking email to being stoned?
Yes, and the results were staggering. The workers who were distracted by their inboxes experienced a 10-point drop in their effective IQ during the task.
And the workers who were stoned.
They only experienced a 6-point drop.
The cognitive switching cost of checking your email every 5 minutes literally makes you functionally stupider than someone who has been smoking weed. That is wild.
It's pure neurology.
Yeah.
The human brain is not a parallel processor. It is a serial processor.
Right. Every time you switch your attention from writing a proposal to reading an email, your brain has to disengage from the first task, evaluate the new input, and then re-engage with the original task.
That switching cost takes time and burns massive amounts of glucose. By the end of the day, you have decision fatigue not because you do hard work, but because you switched context 300 times.
So the low information diet combats this by aggressively severing the input streams. It means going on a literal media fast.
You stop reading daily newspapers, you stop endlessly scrolling news websites, you turn off cable news.
You stop consuming information just in case you might need it someday, and you shift to a model of just-in-time information. Data you seek out only when you have an immediate, actionable problem to solve.
The Reddit community summaries highlighted practical tools for this, like using browser extensions such as LeechBlock to physically lock yourself out of distracting websites during working hours.
But it's not just digital. It's also about the physical art of non-finishing.
Oh, this was huge for me.
Yeah.
I suffer from completionist guilt. If I start a book, I feel morally obligated to finish it, even if it's terrible.
That is the sunk cost fallacy applied to your attention span. The rule of non-finishing states that starting something does not justify finishing it if it is no longer providing value.
If you read the first 3 chapters of a business book and it's redundant, put it down.
The example used is literally if you are sitting in the movie theater watching Matrix 3 and you realize it's awful, get up and walk out. Stop throwing good time after bad.
But let's bring this back to the office. I can walk out of a movie. I can't walk out of my inbox. How do you manage the information you must process to keep your job?
You apply a technique called batching. Instead of leaving your email client open all day and reacting to every chime like one of Pavlov's dogs, you process your communications in rigid, predetermined batches.
You turn off all push notifications. You check your email exactly twice a day. The text recommends 12:00 p.m. right before lunch and 4:00 p.m. right before the end of the day.
Which means you have massive, uninterrupted blocks of deep work in the morning and early afternoon.
But what happens to the people trying to reach you?
You manage their expectations through automated systems. You set up a permanent autoresponder that politely explains your new communication policy.
It might say, due to a high workload, I'm currently checking and responding to email twice daily at 12 p.m. and 4 p.m.
If this is truly urgent, please call my cell phone.
And what happens is nobody calls because 99% of emails are not actually urgent.
You effectively train your colleagues, your boss, and your clients to stop treating you like a real-time chat service.
But it's not just about email. Batching applies to decision-making as well. You have to eliminate the bottlenecks where you are the point of failure.
This is a vital lesson for entrepreneurs or middle managers. You must empower the people below you to make decisions without your constant input.
The text uses a great example of Ferriss sending a memo to his outsourced customer service team.
He gave them a simple edict. Fix any customer issue that costs under $100 without asking me for permission. Do not email me. Just fix it.
I can hear business owners gasping at that. What if they give away too much money?
You have to do the math. The time you spend reading an email from an employee, evaluating a $40 refund request, agonizing over it, and replying to authorize it.
Your time is worth more than the $40.
Exactly. You accept a small margin of error or occasional minor financial losses as the very acceptable cost of gaining back dozens of hours of executive focus.
Okay, I love the logic of this. The math is undeniable. But I have to offer some serious pushback here on behalf of the listener.
Let's hear it.
Let's say I'm an employee at a mid-sized corporation. If I suddenly refuse to answer my boss's emails until 4:00 p.m., and I start declining internal meetings because they don't fit my Pareto optimized 20%,
Yeah, I see where this is going.
I am not going to become the new rich. I'm going to get fired on Friday.
How does a normal person actually implement this without destroying their career?
It's a very valid fear, and it's why you cannot execute this overnight. You don't walk into the office and announce a radical manifesto.
Okay, so what do you do?
You implement these changes through a psychological tactic called the puppy dog close.
The puppy dog close. Like a pet store owner telling a hesitant family, just take the puppy home for the weekend. No commitment. If the kids don't like it, bring it back on Monday.
Exactly. The family never brings the puppy back because they fall in love with it. In a corporate environment, you ask your boss for a small, temporary, completely reversible trial period. You don't say, I am never attending the weekly status meeting again.
No, you say, I am deeply focused on closing the Miller account this week. To ensure I hit the deadline, I'd like to try skipping the Wednesday status meeting and batching my emails just for the next 3 days as an experiment to see if my output improves.
And because you've eliminated the distraction, your output does improve. You crush the Miller account.
Precisely. You use the trial period to generate undeniable metrics. When you demonstrate vastly superior results, those results buy you leverage.
Your boss realizes that your weird new habits actually make you a more valuable asset to the company. Over time, the trial period simply becomes the new standard operating procedure.
Okay, that makes it infinitely more realistic. So let's look at where we are in the framework. We've defined our target income, we've aggressively applied the 80-20 rule and Parkinson's law to eliminate all the fluff.
But here is the logical wall you hit. Even after you cut the 80% of useless tasks, you are still left with the 20% that actually matters.
Right. And depending on your job, that essential work might still take 20 or 30 hours a week. I can't eliminate the core data entry or the essential client billing. I'm stuck. What's the mechanism to escape that?
That is where you transition from personal effectiveness to systemic leverage. That brings us to the A in deal, automation. If you can't eliminate a task, you must replace yourself in the execution of it.
Automation. This is where we step into the somewhat surreal world of virtual assistants, or VAs, and the true application of geo-arbitrage.
But before we get into the wild stories, there is a foundational cardinal rule of automation that has to be established.
Yes, and violating this rule is where most people fail. The rule is never automate something that can be eliminated and never delegate something that can be automated.
If you hire an assistant to manage a disorganized, inefficient process, you haven't solved the problem. You were just paying someone else to run on the hamster wheel for you.
You're wasting money instead of wasting time.
Exactly. Automation only works on streamlined, essential processes. But once you have that lean process, handing it off to a virtual assistant can fundamentally alter your life.
Let's talk about how far you can push this, because the material features a brilliant case study from A.J. Jacobs, an editor at Esquire magazine.
All this story is amazing. He read a book about corporate outsourcing and had a moment of epiphany. He thought, why should Fortune 500 companies have all the fun? Why can't I outsource my own life?
So he hired a team of VAs in Bangalore, India. It's an incredibly entertaining yet profound experiment. He didn't just have them handle boring spreadsheets or data entry. He tested the absolute limits of delegation.
He had them doing deep medical research on his personal health issues. He had them tracking down long-lost high school friends online.
He even had them draft an apology email to his wife after they had an argument.
Now, obviously, having an assistant apologize to your spouse is crossing a weird line, but the underlying premise is fascinating.
He was paying a fraction of what his own time was worth to have an entire team of highly educated people managing the minutiae of his existence.
And that is the mechanics of geo-arbitrage applied to the labor market. You are leveraging massive global currency differences.
Paying an English-speaking, college-educated assistant in the Philippines or India $10 an hour is providing them with a highly competitive, excellent local wage.
Meanwhile, it is an incredible bargain for you because it frees you up to engage in high-leverage work that pays you $100 an hour.
But hiring an assistant to help you with your day job is only level 1. The holy grail of the automation phase isn't just delegating tasks, it's building an entirely automated income stream.
The text calls this a muse.
The definition of a muse is very specific, and it's important to distinguish it from a traditional startup. A traditional tech startup or a brick-and-mortar small business is a ravenous beast.
It consumes your life, requires 80-hour weeks, and traps you in management.
A muse is a business designed explicitly to generate cash flow with zero ongoing management from the founder. It is an automated financial vehicle.
We have a perfect modern case study of this from the sources. A guy named Alan Walton read this material and built an e-commerce business called Spy Guy, selling security cameras and gear.
He scaled it to a 7-figure business.
And he describes a single moment that perfectly encapsulates the muse philosophy. He says he woke up one morning around 7 a.m., rolled over in bed, looked at his phone, and saw a notification from Shopify.
He had made a sale for $149 while he was dead asleep. He said he let out an orgasmic noise of relief.
Because the system worked perfectly without his physical presence.
To achieve that, you can't just build any business. You have to build a specific architectural system. A muse usually involves identifying a hyper-niche market.
Often utilizing tools like Google AdWords to micro-test product demand before you ever manufacture anything.
Right. You don't spend $50,000 making a prototype. You build a fake landing page, run $100 worth of ads to it, and see if anyone clicks the buy button.
If they do, you show an out-of-stock message. You've just validated the market with hard data for $100.
Once the demand is validated, you build the machine. Muses typically rely on information products like digital courses or ebooks, which have zero reproduction cost, or drop-shipped physical goods.
Explain the drop shipping mechanism, because that is the key to escaping inventory management.
In a traditional retail business, you buy 10,000 units of a product, store them in your garage, and pack boxes every time someone orders. You are the bottleneck.
In drop shipping, you set up the storefront, but when a customer buys from you, the order is automatically routed to a third-party manufacturer or wholesale warehouse.
They pack the box and ship it directly to the customer. You never touch the inventory.
Combine that with an outsourced call center to handle customer returns and automated payment processors like Stripe or PayPal, and you have effectively removed yourself from the day-to-day operations.
You are no longer the manager. You are the architect watching the machine run.
However, initiating this level of delegation and automation naturally triggers severe anxiety.
Oh, absolutely. This is the moment where I think a lot of listeners will pump the brakes because we're talking about handing over your passwords, your email inbox, and potentially your credit card information to a stranger you have never met.
Who lives on the other side of the planet. Isn't that just begging for your identity to be stolen? Are we fundamentally crazy to do this?
It's a very rational fear, and the material addresses it not by dismissing it, but by offering concrete risk management protocols. You don't just blindly trust people, you build a secure architecture.
First and foremost, you never, ever use debit cards with remote assistance or automated platforms.
Because if a debit card is compromised, the money comes straight out of your checking account. Your rent money is gone, and you're fighting the bank for months to get it back.
Exactly. You exclusively use credit cards, specifically ones with robust fraud protection, like American Express, where fraudulent or mistaken charges can be immediately disputed and reversed.
The bank's money is at risk, not yours, which means the bank will fight for you.
That's a huge tactical takeaway.
Secondly, you utilize password managers to create separate, unique logins for your VAs on any platforms they need to access. You limit their permissions.
You never hand over the master keys to your digital life. You establish highly specific communication rules.
And beyond the security protocols, there is a philosophical shift you have to make. You have to recognize that occasionally dealing with a minor issue, a VA making a mistake, a dropped order, a small financial loss, is the acceptable cost of doing business.
It is the tax you pay for gaining ultimate freedom. You cannot let the fear of a hypothetical problem keep you trapped in the guaranteed misery of an 80-hour work week.
You build a moat around your biggest risks, but you accept a little bit of friction. Okay, so let's look at the ultimate scenario. We've eliminated the busy work. We've automated our income, either by building a muse or by delegating our corporate tasks to a team of VAs.
We've done it. But if you are still physically required to sit in an office chair under fluorescent lights from 9 to 5 just to show your face to middle management, you aren't truly free.
Which brings us to the final step of the deal framework, L for liberation. We have freed up the time. Now we need to physically escape the location.
Escaping the desk. For employees, this is the ultimate negotiation, securing a remote work agreement. And the book is incredibly tactical about this. You don't just walk in on a Tuesday and demand to work from home forever.
The book outlines a very specific strategy, illustrated by a case study of a worker named Sherwood. He used a 5-step plan to gradually and systematically liberate himself from the office.
It doesn't begin with asking for anything. It begins with increasing your value to the company.
Right. You become indispensable. You get them to invest in specialized training for you, or you take on a critical client account. You make it extremely painful and expensive for them to replace you.
Once you have that leverage, you begin proving the concept of remote productivity. My absolute favorite tactic from this section is the sick day maneuver.
Oh, it's brilliant.
You call in sick on a Tuesday, but you aren't actually sick. You work from home, and you use that uninterrupted day to absolutely crush your to-do list.
You generate undeniable, documented proof that you are vastly more productive when you aren't surrounded by office gossip and endless meetings.
Armed with that proof, you propose a revocable trial period. This is the puppy dog close again. You suggest working remotely just 2 days a week for 2 weeks.
This is called the hourglass approach. You start small, over-deliver on your output during those remote days, and gradually expand the remote time 3 days, then 4 until you are fully liberated.
I should note a critical sequencing rule here for traditional employees. If you are an employee, the framework is actually D-Way. You have to liberate yourself from the physical office before you fully automate your job.
Because if you automate your job while sitting in a cubicle, your boss will just notice you have free time and pile twice as much work on you.
A very crucial distinction. But once you are free, whether you are a newly remote employee or an entrepreneur with a muse, the way you utilize that freedom must change.
The goal is not to take the traditional, frantic American vacation.
The 8-day binge vacation, where you fly to Europe, try to cram 10 cities into 7 days, take 1,000 photos, and return to work more exhausted than when you left.
Exactly. The new rich replaced the binge vacation with the concept of the mini retirement. A mini retirement is defined as relocating to one place for 1 to 6 months at a time.
You aren't escaping your life for a week. You are fundamentally experiencing a new one at a speed that allows the culture to actually change you.
And again, the math works in your favor. If you book a hotel in Miami for a week, it might cost you $3,000. But if you rent a beautiful apartment in Buenos Aires or Berlin for an entire month, it might cost you a fraction of that.
Your cost of living plummets, while your quality of life, your relative income, skyrockets. You are living the dream.
But this is where the material takes a fascinating, almost philosophical turn. Because liberation has a dark side. It asks a profound psychological question. What happens when the noise finally stops?
The void.
Yes. When you strip away the 9-to-5 structure, when you stop checking email every 10 minutes, when the office politics disappear, you are suddenly faced with an ocean of free time.
And for a lot of high-achieving individuals, this does not induce peace. It induces a profound sense of psychological dread.
It makes total sense. Think about a deep-sea diver operating under immense pressure. If you pull that diver up to the surface too quickly without a plan for decompression, they get the bends.
The nitrogen bubbles in their blood literally tear them apart. The same thing happens psychologically. You are so used to the crushing pressure of the work week that the sudden lack of pressure is agonizing.
You don't know who you are without your stress.
The material perfectly describes it as that senior year of college feeling. The rigid structure of syllabi and semesters is gone. The tribal unit of your classmates or coworkers is gone.
And you are left staring at the ceiling asking, what am I actually supposed to do with my life?
Because without the distraction of being busy, the big existential questions get really loud, really fast. You can't hide behind a spreadsheet anymore.
So how do you avoid the psychological bends? If sitting on a beach sipping margaritas gets boring after week 2, how do you fill the void?
The framework provides a two-pronged solution for filling the void. Continuous learning in service.
Let's unpack that. Learning isn't just reading more business books.
No, it's engaging in immersive, often kinetic skills. It's moving to Argentina and dedicating 3 hours a day to learning the language and studying the tango.
It's moving to Japan to study kendo. It's about engaging your brain and your body in a state of flow, actively pursuing eustress.
And service. Now, the material makes a very sharp distinction here. Service isn't necessarily about grand global philanthropy.
It's not necessarily saving the whales or starting a massive nonprofit unless that is your genuine calling.
Right. It defines service as actively improving life around you in a tangible way. You could be mentoring a single individual, volunteering at a local shelter in your host country, or creating art that elevates your community.
Doing something that betters the world, however small the radius, provides the lasting meaning that is necessary when the artificial structure of the corporate rat race is removed.
Okay, we have mapped out the entire deal framework. We've defined the dream, eliminated the busy work, automated the income, and liberated our location.
We're living in Berlin, learning German, checking our email twice a week, while a VA in Bangalore ensures our Shopify store runs perfectly. It sounds like an absolute utopia.
But we promised at the beginning to separate the hype from the reality. It is time for the reality check. How much of this masterclass in lifestyle design is actually actionable for the average person, and how much is just incredibly brilliant best-selling marketing?
This is where we must synthesize the critiques and the long-term data. We have to look at the extensive review by financial expert Ramit Sethi and the decade-long reflections from the Reddit community, specifically a power user named Thomas Chua who spent years applying this methodology.
Ramit Sethi is the perfect counterweight for this. He teaches personal finance and business psychology from a very grounded, practical standpoint. He doesn't deal in fantasy.
So where does Sethi agree with Ferriss, and where does he draw the line?
Sethi completely aligns with the foundational philosophy. He heavily champions the application of the 80-20 rule, validating that most knowledge workers are drowning in busy work that doesn't actually move the needle.
He agrees passionately on the extreme dangers of the deferred life plan. He warns that waiting until you are 65 to start living your rich life is a terrible losing gamble.
And he acknowledges the very real power of automation for eliminating repetitive, low-value tasks.
But there's a major but coming.
The critique targets the literal 4-hour claim. Sethi argues that for the vast majority of businesses, careers, and industries, a literal 4-hour workweek is either a complete myth or highly unsustainable in the long term.
He specifically warns against the blanket advice of outsourcing everything.
Which makes sense. He points out that managing virtual assistants is an entirely separate, highly complex skill.
If you don't have highly repetitive, easily documented, standardized tasks, hiring a VA might actually create more work for you. You end up spending 30 hours a week fixing the mistakes of the person you hired to save you time.
Exactly. Sethi also cautions against the allure of the muse. He notes that chasing quick hacks and fully automated grocery shipping businesses often comes at the expense of building sustainable, high-value, long-term systems.
He points out that the easy money of a perfectly automated business rarely materializes without massive, grueling upfront work and typically a graveyard of failed experiments.
That sentiment is heavily echoed by Thomas Chua on Reddit. Chua applied these principles for a decade. He notes that we have to understand the context of the book.
Ferriss was targeting a very specific demographic of burned-out, highly stressed professionals. He needed a provocative hook to pull them out of their stupor.
The 4 hours is that hook. It makes you look, it sells the book. But Chua frankly states that finding a business that genuinely runs on 4 hours of maintenance a week is about as likely as capturing a unicorn.
To fully contextualize this, we have to remember the publication date. The book was written in 2007. It effectively predicted and laid the groundwork for the remote work and digital nomad revolution that wouldn't become mainstream until over a decade later.
Particularly accelerated by the global shifts of 2020. That's a great point. In 2007, the idea of doing a video conference call from a beach cafe in Thailand was literal science fiction for most middle managers.
You sounded crazy proposing it. Now, it's just a regular Tuesday on Zoom. The culture has caught up to the book.
But because the culture has caught up, the landscape has changed. Finding an untapped niche for a fully automated muse is undeniably harder today.
The market is saturated with millions of people who have read the same book, trying to drop ship the exact same products.
The arbitrage gap is closed a bit. So if the literal 4-hour mark is a marketing myth for most people, and building a perfectly automated e-commerce business is vastly harder today than it was 15 years ago, what is the real takeaway?
What is the lasting value of this deep dive for the listener today?
The ultimate takeaway isn't a specific number of hours, it's a philosophy of intentionality. The true value of this framework is making a conscious, aggressive shift from default living to designed living.
The goal isn't necessarily to stop working altogether. It is to stop working on things that don't matter.
It's about auditing your life.
Precisely. You might successfully apply every principle of the DEAL framework. You eliminate the busy work, you automate the administration, you gain total geographic freedom, and you might still choose to work 40 or 50 hours a week.
But the fundamental difference is agency. You do it because you love the work. You do it because it provides eustress, meaning, and connection.
You do not do it because you are inefficient, terrified of your manager's disapproval, or trapped by a mortgage on a lifestyle you don't even enjoy.
It's about regaining control of the steering wheel, being the pilot of your time, not a passive passenger on the deferred life express.
It's about ruthlessly leveraging your time and your resources to maximize your ultimate freedom to choose.
I think that is the perfect synthesis. Okay, let's recap the massive journey we've been on today. We started by defining a completely new currency, valuing time and mobility over absolute cash.
We broke down dreamlining to figure out what actually excites you, rather than just what you think you should want.
Then we moved into elimination, killing the empty calories of information, going on a media diet, and using the 80-20 rule to brutally focus only on what generates real results.
From there, we automated leveraging global talent, virtual assistants, and building systems that operate whether we are awake or asleep.
And finally, liberation, escaping the physical confines of the office, avoiding the psychological bends by filling our time with learning and service, and taking mini retirements now instead of waiting until we're 65 to crack open that bottle of wine.
When viewed entirely, it is nothing less than a radical, ground-up redesign of the human work-life equation.
It really is. And to close this out, we want to leave you, the listener, with a specific thought experiment. A way to pressure test your own life, your own career, right now, today.
Imagine you received a non-negotiable legal mandate tomorrow morning. You are legally forbidden from working more than 4 hours a week. If you work a single minute over those 4 hours, you go to jail.
But, and here's the catch, you still have to maintain your current level of income to survive and feed your family.
Exactly. The constraint is absolute and terrifying. So ask yourself, under that extreme life or death pressure, what is the very first thing you would cut from your workday?
And what is the one single task you would focus all your remaining 4 hours on to keep the ship afloat?
Take a hard, honest look at your answer to that question.
Because whatever that task is, and whatever that cut is, that is the exact place you need to start changing your life today.